All righty, Brian. Well, before we talk about some more of the new stuff, we got to go back and talk about some of the old stuff. And it's been quite popular here lately on the program that we've been going back through some of my file drawers and looking at the old paperwork and the TNA agent reports and various communication that I had there and some of the WWE stuff, the OVW stuff. I had, again, something else I forgot about. We had done, or I had done, uh, an agent report before that last set that we've been talking about 7 or 8 months beforehand. And I'd forgotten that they were trying to make that a thing at one point. And I'll explain as we get through this how it didn't become a thing, but also because everybody still asks or wonders or they can't get a grip on what is the job of an agent or a producer in the wrestling on the TV shows and everything. And TNA tried to put it down on paper. And I thought if you want to learn something about the job description, you're going to, but at the same time, as they put it down on paper and they kept going with it, it becomes more and more obvious how fucking ridiculous that it is to try to write it down on paper. Does that make any sense to you, Brian?
It does. I should say it does and it doesn't, but no, I understand what you're saying. I can't wait to hear how they put it down there. It is one of those jobs that people wonder about, a producer, an agent. How much of that was a Vince McMahon creation?
Probably all of it, really. They started doing it in WCW when Turner Broadcasting had taken over. And it still wasn't as many people and wasn't to the degree. It was more like, somebody on the creative team or whatever, give these instructions or whatever. And then, Vince, of course, took it and ran with it because it made everything more like television, more like movie making, more like entertainment. And then with the way that the programs evolved, and at the same time as the TVs were getting more and more intricate and more complicated, and you had to know where everything was and what was going on, the talent started getting less and less experienced as one increased, the other decreased. And then it became like you almost can't do this without it. There's not one person doesn't have the time of the day or the capability to deal with everything, right? So and now we're stuck with it. But this agent report sent to my old friend Terry Taylor, you remember us talking about him, Brian. This was Friday, January 16th, 2009. And this was about the pay-per-view that was done on the 11th and the TV tapings on the 12th and 13th. And not real long, but this was actually, I made note at the top of it. This was for when I got the website. Remember, I told you it was 2009. This was the very first email I sent all by myself without Stacy helping me. How about them apples? Wow. I've got it documented right here. I've been doing this for 16 years now, the email thing.
You should sell copies of that. Jim Cornette's first email.
Well, and as a matter of fact, I might. When I read it, see if you think there's anything to that.
Rookie year email.
So this was for the Genesis pay-per-view, as I said, January 11th. And I'm going to hop through a couple of things, but Sheik Abdul Bashir against Shane Sewell. They were a pleasure to work with, attentive, did their best, do exactly as told. Following Shelley versus Sabin, the crowd was tired, but they worked hard and got the people into it by the finish. Good match. Earl Hebner did well. Crowd popped for the finish, blah, blah, blah. Rhino versus Sting. They went in with a lot of handicaps. Sting's knees, having to follow Angle versus Jeff, which was impossible. That was the night. And this pay-per-view, by the way, was not for once in Orlando. That was the night that we were in Charlotte on location at the old Charlotte Coliseum. Jeff Jarrett and Kurt Angle had the match that night that was the best match that I ever saw in the history of TNA wrestling. Anyway, here's the problem. They had booked Sting versus Rhino. Sting, at this point, was in the Main Event Mafia. Do you remember that thing? Where he was in the group of top heels, even though he wasn't a heel?
Yeah, again, this is a period of time I would read about, but I didn't watch it. It didn't seem like I should watch it. And I kind of know about the Main Event Mafia. Yeah, Kevin Nash, right? Booker T.
Yes. Somebody had put together a group of heels called the Main Event Mafia because they had been big stars on the big television programs, not our little TNA production. And Sting was in it, even though he was a babyface. And even though when he was booked against other baby faces and you would try to come up with a finish, he wouldn't cheat. He'd say, but Sting, you can't beat him with a why. I'm not a heel. Then why are you in the heel group? Ask Vince. And then everybody would ask Vince. And he would explain it. And then we still wouldn't know what the fuck he was talking about. So we had a top main event heel, that a top main event babyface in the heel group, but he is a babyface, so he wouldn't cheat. And Vince will explain everything. So they had booked Sting versus Rhino. Sting's knees were bad. He had to follow Angle against Jeff. Rhino, because of, again, someone's stories that they wrote and had to be perpetrated, and all the time and effort goes into the backstage interviews, Rhino had to do a pre-tape. No, I'm sorry. Well, they may have done a pre-tape, but Rhino had to go to the ring for the match selling an attack from earlier in the day, which meant that he had to get color in the locker room for the pre-tapes and then again in the match.
Oh, man.
So I said he deserves special attention, special mention for him to get color in a fucking locker room to satisfy the goddamn production demands of this demented weasel booking this thing. And he had to go in selling the storyline beating. So he's selling, he's hurt. The heel he's facing is Sting in Charlotte. So he was a huge baby face. And I said, so all said the match was not very good, but it wasn't their fault. So then,
whose fault
Brian,
was it? Whose fault was it, Jim?
I just said it wasn't their fault. But then we were in Charlotte for a pay-per-view on Sunday night, 8 to 11 p.m. And then everybody had to go to Orlando the next day for TV. So everybody was goddamn tired and beat up and wore out, and not including me. I wasn't beat up, but I was double wore out because I drove. So I got in about 10 o'clock in the morning, and I took Stace with me so I wouldn't run off fucking road and fall asleep on the way. And we checked in about 10 o'clock in the morning at the hotel, got a couple hours sleep, and then was over at this goddamn amusement park. I wasn't amused. So we do the TV on January 12th. And this was, remember I said a lot of the problems stemmed from having that match between Hernandez and Sting, and in that tournament. Right. Well, in January, they had a match between Hernandez and Sting, but this was when Sting was actually in the heel group before he had broken out of it or whatever, and also with 18 million people running in, and before they had decided to fully do the whole Super Mex thing, but they wanted to make something out of Hernandez. So Hernandez versus Sting also involved Sewell, Homicide, Angle, Booker, Steiner, Devon, AJ, Bubba, and all the referees. Between the late arrivals, tons of pre-tapes, and general talent malaise after the trip from Charlotte, I was unable to get all these people in the same place until 5:30 p.m. At that point, I got less than halfway through laying it out before Booker started his usual complaining. It was too busy. It buried the referee. It didn't make sense. It wasn't real. The problem is he had valid points about much of it. but, but nobody liked the manner he complains, as well as that the time to do so was not 30 minutes to showtime. At 4:15, he was eating a salad, not even dressed. Anyway, I got Jeff, who gave them a stern talking to and told them they were grown men, work it out. And it was finally a point where I said, fuck it, let me go see if I can get someone to lend some authority to this and get everybody on the same page to figure something out if they didn't like what Shitstain had wanted them to do, which was the shits, right? So we changed the finish from go ahead.
But Jeff was there. This is before Jeff was gone. That's the big difference between this round of reports and the other ones you did.
Yes. And this is an example of what he was doing on a regular goddamn basis. And why that when he was not there, everything went to shit. We changed the finish from a pinfall to a disqualification, eliminated some extraneous spots written in on the format. And upon execution, it turned out to be a wild segment with lots of heat, and Jeff was happy. Match-wise, Sting did great, and Hernandez looked his best ever as a single, and the crowd took him as a top guy. But that was this is one goddamn match that we had to do on a taping of a 2-hour TV show. It involves 15 people. Nobody involved in it likes what they're being told to fucking do because it doesn't make sense, et cetera, because it didn't. Booker's a pain in the ass about it. And then we got to go get Jeff, who says, God damn it, take this out, take that out, do this, put that in. And it's you guys, you're grown men, work it out.
How often were spots written on the format?
Whenever dipshit could think of them. You know, there'd be bullet points for the promo and then match starts. And then every once in a while, it'd be a bullet point would be so-and-so gets put through a table. So-and-so and so-and-so get involved. How? Why? For what? It just different bullet. What the fuck? Because he sees in his head, he replays over and over his greatest 9 months of fucking success in his 40-year career. A bunch of attitude era bullshit with no context. Everybody running around, everybody running in. Does this sound familiar? Except the talent on the TV shows these days in AEW is not smart enough to be able to tell that it doesn't make any sense and they can't fucking do it. They just try anyway.